thought graduation night was supposed to be about celebrating everything I'd worked for. But the moment my mom stood up at that dinner table, smiling like she was about to announce something wonderful, I felt my stomach twist. The restaurant was warm and loud, filled with laughter and clinking glasses, but suddenly all I could hear was the pounding in my chest. My diploma was still in my bag, my cap was on the chair beside me, and for the first time all evening, I wasn't thinking about my future. I was bracing for something I couldn't yet explain. I'm 24, and I just finished my degree in business management. It wasn't easy. I worked 2 part-time jobs, stayed up late writing papers, and skipped more weekends than I can count. My dad passed away when I was 17, so it was just me and my mom after that. For a long time, I believed we were a team. She always said she was proud of me, that my success was her success, and that everything she did was for my future. I trusted her, even when some of her decisions didn't fully make sense to me. When I was 20, my dad's life insurance money came through. It was more than I ever expected, and after talking to a financial advisor, I decided to invest most of it into a small rental property. Over time, that turned into a beautiful house in a growing neighborhood worth around $310,000. I didn't live in it, but the rental income helped pay my tuition and expenses. The car I drove, a simple but reliable SUV, was also in my name. I paid for the insurance, the maintenance, everything. My mom didn't contribute financially, but she always spoke about our assets like they belonged to both of us. That night, the graduation dinner was her idea. She picked the restaurant, invited her friends, and insisted on making it a big event. I didn't mind. I thought it was her way of celebrating me. She even wore her favorite dress, the one she saves for special occasions, and kept telling everyone, my daughter did it all on her own. I smiled and thanked people, feeling proud, but also tired, ready for the night to end so I could finally breathe. Halfway through dinner, after dessert menus were passed around, my mom tapped her glass with her spoon. The table went quiet and everyone turned toward her. She stood up, holding her phone, and smiled at me in a way that felt too practiced. "I have a little surprise for my daughter," she said, her voice sweet and confident. My heart skipped, but I forced a smile, thinking maybe she bought me something small, like a watch or a necklace. Then she turned to her friend Linda, who was sitting across from me, and said, "Congratulations on your new car. You deserve it." Linda's eyes widened and she looked at me confused but excited. My mom continued, "My daughter has decided to gift you her SUV as a graduation celebration." The room filled with gasps and applause, but I just sat there, frozen, my fork still in my hand. I hadn't decided anything. No one had asked me. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under my chair. I finally found my voice and said quietly, "Mom, what are you talking about?" She waved her hand like I was being dramatic. "Honey, you're graduating. You don't need that old car anymore. Linda really needs it, and it's a blessing to help others." Everyone was watching me, waiting for me to smile and agree. My cheeks burned and my throat felt tight. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I forced a laugh and said, "We'll talk about it later." But later came quickly. In the parking lot, Linda hugged me and thanked me like the car was already hers. My mom handed her the spare key she'd somehow kept. I stood there, stunned, watching my own car drive away. When I confronted my mom, she said, "Don't be selfish. You have more than enough. This is what your father would have wanted." That sentence hurt more than anything else she said. My dad had always taught me to protect my future, not give it away without thinking. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my bedroom, staring at the wall, replaying the dinner over and over. It wasn't just about the car. It was about control. It was about my mom making decisions about my life without asking me, using my hard work and my father's legacy to look generous in front of her friends. For the first time, I wondered how much of my success she actually respected. The next morning, I checked my bank accounts, my property documents, and my car registration. Everything was still in my name, at least on paper, but I realized something important. My mom had access to my information. She knew where the documents were, she knew the routines, and she knew how to make me feel guilty enough to stay quiet. That realization scared me more than losing the car. Later that day, she walked into my room like nothing had happened and said, "You should be grateful. People admire generosity." I looked at her and felt something shift inside me. I wasn't angry in a loud way. I was calm, but it was the kind of calm that comes before a storm. I nodded and said, "You're right, Mom." She smiled, thinking she'd won. But that night, lying in bed, I made a decision. If my mom wanted to give away my future without my permission, then I was going to take control of it completely. I wasn't going to yell or fight. I was going to protect myself quietly, legally, and permanently. I opened my laptop, logged into my property management account, and stared at the listing for the house worth $310,000. By the time the sun started to rise, I wasn't just a graduate. I was someone who had finally realized that not everyone who says they love you is looking out for your best interests, and I was ready to make a move that would change everything. Over the next few days, my mom acted like nothing was wrong. She posted pictures from the graduation dinner on social media, tagging her friends and writing captions about how proud she was of me. Under one of the photos, someone commented, "So generous of your daughter to gift a car." My mom replied with a heart emoji. Every time I saw those words, my chest tightened, but I stayed quiet. I knew now that reacting emotionally only gave her more control. Instead, I focused on getting my life in order. I changed my passwords, moved important documents to a secure place, and opened a new bank account that only I could access. It felt strange, almost like I was preparing for a breakup, except it was with my own mother. I still loved her, but I no longer trusted her. That was a painful truth to accept. One evening, I finally asked her directly, "Why did you give away my car without asking me?" She sighed dramatically and said, "You're young. You don't understand how the world works. Sharing your blessings brings good energy." Then she added, "Besides, you have that big house investment. You're doing fine." Her words confirmed what I already knew. In her mind, my achievements were just resources she could use to look kind and powerful. That night, I drove to the rental house. The tenants had recently moved out, and the place was empty, quiet, and full of memories of the work I'd put into it. I walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, the door frames, the kitchen counter I'd chosen myself. This house wasn't just an investment. It was proof that I could build something on my own. But it was also a reminder that as long as my mom had access to my life, nothing was truly safe. I sat in the living room and called my real estate agent. I told him I wanted to list the property immediately. He sounded surprised and asked if I was sure. "It's a strong market," he said. "You could hold on to it and make even more." I took a deep breath and replied, "I'm sure. I want to sell." When I hung up, my hands were shaking, but my mind felt clear. The next morning, I told my mom I was considering selling the house. Her reaction was instant. "Absolutely not," she said. "That house is your future. You can't make big decisions like that without thinking about us." The word "us" hit me hard. There it was again, the assumption that my life was a shared project she had authority over. I smiled politely and said, "I just want to explore my options." Over the next 2 weeks, the house received multiple offers. The market was hot, and the final price landed right around $310,000. When my agent called to confirm the deal, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. I wasn't just selling a property, I was selling a chapter of my life where I let someone else control my choices. I didn't tell my mom about the final sale. I knew she would try to interfere, to guilt me, or to take credit. Instead, I handled everything quietly. The paperwork, the bank transfer, the legal steps. When the money hit my new account, I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't about the number, it was about freedom. That same evening, my mom came home excited. She said, "Linda loves the car. She says it runs so smoothly." I nodded and replied, "That's nice." My calm seemed to confuse her, but she didn't push it. She assumed I'd accepted the situation. Later that night, I packed a small bag, just clothes, my laptop, and important documents. I wasn't running away, I was creating space. I booked a short stay at a nearby apartment complex, somewhere quiet where I could think clearly. As I locked my bedroom door, I realized how heavy it had felt to live under constant emotional pressure. The next morning, I left a note on the kitchen table. It said, "I need some time to focus on my next steps. I'll call you soon." I didn't explain more because I didn't owe her an explanation anymore. I drove away, feeling both nervous and empowered. In my new place, I spent hours planning my future. I applied for jobs, looked into graduate programs, and started thinking about buying my own home, one that only I controlled. The more I planned, the more confident I felt. For the first time, my success belonged entirely to me. 3 days later, my mom called. Her voice was sharp. "Why didn't you tell me you sold the house?" I paused, then calmly said, "Because it was my decision." There was silence on the other end of the line. She finally replied, "You're being ungrateful." I answered, "I'm being responsible." That was the moment I knew our relationship had changed forever. I wasn't her little girl anymore. I was a woman who had learned the hard way that love doesn't always mean respect, and that sometimes protecting your future means standing alone. But what I didn't know yet was how far my mom was willing to go to regain control, and how my decision would force a final, unforgettable confrontation. A week after the sale, my mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her smile tight and forced. "We need to talk," she said. I stepped aside and let her in, my heart racing, but my voice steady. I had prepared for this moment, not with anger, but with clarity. She sat on the couch and looked around like she was inspecting my choices. "You've changed," she said. "You're distant, cold." I took a seat across from her and replied, "I've grown." The words felt simple, but they carried years of quiet frustration. She leaned forward and said, "You sold that house out of spite. That money should have stayed in the family." I looked her in the eye and said, "That money came from my father's legacy and my hard work. It was never yours to control." Her expression shifted from confident to shocked. For the first time, she realized I wasn't backing down. The conversation grew tense, but I stayed calm. I explained how giving away my car without asking me crossed a line, how it made me feel invisible, and how I no longer felt safe letting her manage or influence my financial life. She tried to interrupt, to defend herself, but I kept speaking, not loudly, just firmly. This wasn't about punishment. It was about boundaries. Finally, she stood up and said, "You think money makes you powerful." I answered, "No, knowing my worth does." That was the moment everything changed. She realized she could no longer use guilt or emotional pressure to guide my choices. After she left, I felt a strange sense of peace. There was no dramatic explosion, no shouting match, just a quiet, powerful shift in control. I had chosen myself, and that choice felt stronger than any argument. In the weeks that followed, I started a new job and began planning my future on my own terms. I didn't cut my mom out of my life completely, but our relationship became more distant, more respectful, and more honest. She stopped making decisions for me, and I stopped letting her. Looking back, I realized that graduation night wasn't just about a diploma or a dinner. It was the night I finally saw the truth about control, independence, and self-respect. My mom giving away my car wasn't just a betrayal. It was a wake-up call. Selling that $310,000 house wasn't revenge in a loud, dramatic way. It was a quiet declaration of independence. It was me saying, my future belongs to me. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly free.